Hello, thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to be starting a new mini-series with my goal in teaching and discussing with fellow wildlife photographers how to find and identify different habitats that are productive for wildlife photography. Now, not all habitats are equal when it comes to wildlife abundance and diversity, and having a sense of which locations are going to be productive for you can really help you improve and increase your chances of finding wildlife to photograph. Now, abundance and diversity are two separate things. Abundance is basically the number of animals that you're going to find at a habitat. Diversity is the number of different species that you're going to find at a habitat. So while they kind of go hand in hand, they're two separate things, and they're both equally important. Now, you can have a habitat with high abundance and low diversity, or you can have it the other way. You can have a habitat with high diversity but low abundance. But really the gold standard, the thing you're really looking for, is having a habitat that's going to have high abundance and high diversity, because those habitats and those locations are going to allow you to have really good success in, number one, finding wildlife to photograph, having a lot of different species to choose from to photograph, and also have you have the highest success in getting some photos that you're looking for, because there's just so much wildlife in that location. And that's the goal of this series, to go through these kinds of habitats that have both high abundance and high diversity, go through them, explain the different habitat types, where and how you can find them. And the good thing is a lot of these habitat types are going to be found no matter where you are. And the first one we're going to be talking about today is the riparian zone. Welcome to this series on wildlife photography, where we'll unlock the power of understanding habitats. Each environment, whether forests, wetlands, or grasslands, shapes the abundance and diversity of the wildlife you'll find. By learning to read these habitats, you'll not only discover more opportunities in the field, but also capture stronger, more intentional images. This series is here to help you take your wildlife photography to the next level. If this sounds like something that will help you, consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. This is a free way to show your support. If you want to take your support to the next level, consider joining this channel's growing community of members. For less than the price of a cup of coffee each month, you can personally help support me and this channel so I can continue to make impactful content. Thank you for those who have already shown your support. Now let's get back to the series. Riparian areas, by definition, is locations that are adjacent to bodies of water. So just from that, you can kind of get the sense that these riparian zones are going to look like a lot of different things. It could be just narrow little banks along a brook or a stream or a river that goes through a desert or a plain, or in this case here, a forest. It can be banks of a lake or a pond, so you can have a lot of different things that it looks like, or it can be a wetland or a beaver meadow like I have right behind me here. All of those are riparian zones, so they look like different things, but the commonality is that they all are around water, so water is the key component here. There's some swallows or chimney swifts that are out here. Chimney swifts. And they are flying low along the water, and they're catching insects right off the surface of the water. So I'm gonna move over a little bit and see if I can get just a little bit lower to the water. Right now, the autofocus is getting confused with the lily pads in the background because there's a lot of distractions in the background. So I'm gonna move over and try to get a little bit lower to hopefully make the birds stand out more for the camera. Now, riparian areas can look different depending on a couple of factors, and the two most important factors is how much water is available and flowing through that location and the topography of the land. So if you have a lot of water and the land around that body of water is relatively flat leading up to the banks, you're going to have a larger riparian zone because the water is able to spread out and kind of move along those banks. If you have just a small little stream and the banks are very steep, well, you might not have a very large riparian zone at all except for right along the immediate banks, because the water can't go up and kind of be spread out into the soil and utilized by other things. So those are some key factors to think about when you're trying to find a good location where there might be a large riparian zone. And that's why kind of floodplain areas are great, because it's just an area where water kind of moves and seeps into the soil. It's relatively flat, so there's a very large zone that you can work with there. Now, why are these riparian zones so productive for wildlife photography? And I think it's important to kind of start from the bottom up and just kind of think of these habitats as kind of like a pyramid. So at the bottom level, the most important factor with these habitats is that they have water. There's water present. If you've ever seen photos of a stream or a river going through a desert, there's just this lush green area around these rivers and streams. It's like an oasis. And that water brings in that vegetation. And that's the key factor here, is the water allows for a large abundance of plants to form and a huge diversity of plant life to form there as well. And in this diversity, you end up having a lot of shrubs, a lot of low-growing plants, and also plants that produce berries and produce flowers, both of which in turn provide food for wildlife and insects. And as you have this high diversity of plant life, you'll also end up bringing in, and the water does this as well, you're bringing a huge diversity of insects as well. Now, insects, again, provide food for animals and wildlife. So you can see how this water brings in the plant life and then also brings in the insects, which provide food for wildlife. Also in the water, you're going to have amphibians, reptiles. You're going to have fish, also providing food for the wildlife as well. You're also going to have waterfowl in the water, the bodies of water as well. And then it also brings in, you know, the wading birds and that sort of thing. So it just provides a huge amount of food. Also, this vegetation is also important for nesting sites, protection, so shelter for animals as well. A lot of animals nest in this dense shrubby area, or they use it for protection from predators, so it's really important there as well. So you can see that these riparian zones provide for 2 or 3 of basically the basic needs of wildlife and animals. They provide food, shelter, and locations for reproduction if that's the location that they choose to nest or reproduce in. Now, obviously it depends seasonally, but those are the 3 factors that wildlife consider for locations that they want to inhabit. And especially when you're talking this time of year, the young have fledged from their nest when we're talking about birds. So there's just a huge abundance of animals here now, because you have all the young and you also have all the adults, and they're just kind of all moving around in family groups. So it's a really abundant time for wildlife in this location this time of year. And all of these factors lead to an abundance and a diversity of wildlife, because you end up having this nice location of having a lot of food, having a lot of shelter, and having needs for the wildlife. So you end up having a lot of animals come and search out these locations. Even if you're just in the middle of a forest or middle of a desert, you're going to have these animals moving to these locations with water, because it provides for all of their needs, or most of their needs. And if we're just talking about birds, well, there's going to be a huge diversity of birds here. So we have swallows, we have different kind of birds that are going to be hawking insects, so they're going to be catching insects in midair. So those are going to be the insects that are kind of flying along the surface of the water. And then you're going to have birds that are going to be gleaning insect off the surface of things. So you're going to have the warblers, you're going to have the sparrows, water thrush, wrens, that sort of thing. They're going to be kind of along the banks and along the trees and the shrubs along the riparian zone. You're going to also have the wading birds and the waterfowl that are going to be in the water. Kingfishers, all of those things are going to be hunting for the fish and the amphibians that are in the water itself. You can hear all sorts of cedar waxwings, so another kind of flycatcher. There's kingbirds and also phoebes, that sort of thing. So a huge diversity of just flycatchers right there. And then you're also going to have woodpeckers and that sort of thing, because as the water kind of comes in and if there's flooding that occurs, there's going to be some trees that end up dying because they can't use as much water. They end up being flooded out. So you're going to have some standing deadwood. So you're going to have woodpeckers moving in, excavating cavities, building nests in those kind of trees as well. So you can see there's just a huge diversity. And this is just a short list, but a huge diversity of things that you can find in these kind of locations. So it's just a big cycle, how everything moves and works together and uses this location. A wood duck just landed. Just heard it squawk. So that is riparian zones. Definitely a very productive spot. If you're really struggling to find a good location, haven't had success finding wildlife recently, try to find a location around water. It's just such a diverse habitat. One of my favorite locations to go, because there's just such a diversity of species you can find and photograph there. You could spend days there photographing different species, and it's just so fun to be out along the water as well. And the great thing about locations like this is there's water everywhere, so you can, no matter where you're located, chances are you can find a nice riparian zone around you, go explore it, and have your next photography adventure there. And until next time, go out and explore your riparian zone, have some nice photography adventures, let me know what you find. Stay tuned for more in this series. I'm planning to release these kind of intermixed with my other normal videos, and I already have a lot of ideas for upcoming videos, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again real soon. Thanks for watching.